you are not afraid of failure. You are afraid of ambiguity. You can tolerate losing, but you cannot tolerate not knowing what the loss means about you. And that is why you cling to outcomes like they are oxygen. Quick thing before we go deeper. We are building toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and your subscription genuinely helps this channel reach people who actually want psychology, not slogans. And if this hits you in the chest at any point, tap like. It tells the algorithm this is worth surfacing. Now, most people hear detach from outcomes and their brain translates it into stop caring. That is not detachment. That is emotional anesthesia. Real detachment is what high performers do when they care a lot and still stay psychologically free. You have probably tasted this state for brief moments. You worked hard, you did the thing, and for a second you felt clean, not numb, clean. Then the result came in and the story started again. Here is what is actually happening under the hood. Your ambition is not primarily powered by desire. It is powered by prediction. Your nervous system is running a constant forecasting machine, and outcomes feel addictive because they collapse uncertainty. The win is not just pleasure. The win is relief. And the loss is not just pain. The loss is identity threat. That is the real problem we are solving. Not how to care less, but how to stop using outcomes as identity evidence while keeping the engine of ambition running. Let me show you the first mechanism, because it is the one almost nobody names. Your brain treats goals like bets about who you are. You say you want to get in shape, build the business, publish the book, land the relationship, hit the milestone. But underneath the surface goal, there is a hidden question. If I get this, what does it prove? And the answer is usually something like, I am competent, I am chosen, I am safe, I am not behind, I am not wasting my life. So when you pursue outcomes, you are not only pursuing a result, you are pursuing a verdict, and verdicts are not motivating in a healthy way. Verdicts create what psychologists call ego involvement. The task becomes a referendum on self-worth. That changes your risk profile, it changes your attention, it changes your memory. You begin selectively scanning reality for evidence that you are either on track or doomed. It is like living with an internal prosecutor. Notice the pattern here. The more an outcome is tied to your identity, the more your mind will demand certainty. You start over-planning, over-checking, asking for reassurance, looking at metrics too often, replaying conversations, refreshing inboxes, obsessing over signs. You call it ambition. A lot of the time it is just threat monitoring dressed up as drive. Now here is where it gets interesting. Detachment does not start by letting go. Detachment starts by changing what the outcome means. Because the meaning is the hook. The outcome is just the object it hooks onto. So the first practical move is this. You separate the goal from the verdict. You deliberately downgrade the outcome from identity evidence to strategy feedback. Same goal. Completely different psychological contract. If you miss the target and your brain says, this means I am not good enough, you are in verdict mode. If you miss the target and your brain says, interesting, my model was wrong. Let us update, you are in feedback mode. And yes, that sounds simple, which is why people do not do it. Your brain does not want feedback. Your brain wants closure. Closure feels like control, but closure is often a lie you tell yourself to stop feeling uncertainty. Here is a concrete way to catch it in real time. Listen for global language in your own head. Always, never, everyone, no one, ruined, finally, prove, exposed. Global language is the signature of identity betting. Feedback language is local and specific. That email did not convert. That pitch did not land. That workout plan is not sustainable. That was not my best delivery. Local language keeps the self intact while the strategy evolves. If you can do only one thing after this video, do this. Make your self-talk smaller, not softer, smaller. Now, if you are following, the next question is obvious. If outcomes are downgraded to feedback, what keeps you ambitious? What keeps the fire? Most people think ambition requires emotional attachment, that you need to fantasize, to crave, to grip. But that is a misunderstanding of how motivation systems actually work. There are two different fuels, wanting and willing. Wanting is the dopamine system. It is not pleasure. It is pursuit energy, the chemical that says, go get it. It spikes with uncertainty and possibility. That is why gambling is addictive and predictable rewards get boring. Wanting loves variable outcomes. Willing is different. Willing is what you use when you act without needing the emotional high. It is closer to commitment, values, identity as practice, not identity as verdict. Willing is the system that makes you train on days you do not feel inspired. Here is the trap. When you attach to outcomes, you overdose on wanting and you starve willing. Your ambition becomes mood dependent. If the early signals look good, you surge. If signals look bad, you crash. You are not ambitious, you are reactive. Detachment is how you rebuild willing, and the mechanism behind that is fascinating. When you remove the identity verdict from the outcome, you reduce threat. When threat reduces, your prefrontal cortex stays online. Planning improves. Creativity improves. You stop narrowing attention like an animal in danger. You see more options. Your ambition becomes strategic instead of frantic. Think about this for a second. The person who is least attached to the outcome is often the person most capable of achieving it, because they can tolerate the information required to adjust. Attachment makes you fragile to feedback. Detachment makes you usable. Now I want to give you a second insight that will change how you practice detachment, because most advice fails here. You cannot detach from outcomes you keep simulating. Your mind is a prediction engine. It runs mental movies constantly. And every time you rehearse the future with emotional intensity, you are training your nervous system to treat that imagined outcome as real. Then reality arrives, and it either matches the movie and you get relief, or it does not and you get whiplash. This is why people who manifest obsessively also tend to be more outcome attached. They are not visualizing. They are pre-experiencing. They are spending emotional currency in advance. It feels productive, but psychologically it is a loan with brutal interest. Here is what I have observed across high performers, especially in fields with heavy uncertainty. They do not fantasize about the result. They operationalize the next move. They use imagination for rehearsal of process, not consumption of victory. Let me show you what I mean. An attached mind asks, "What if I fail?" and spirals into a movie. A detached, ambitious mind asks, "What would failure look like early?" and creates sensors. That is a totally different use of imagination. One is anxiety entertainment, the other is risk management. So the practice is not stop thinking about it. That is impossible. The practice is to convert simulation into instrumentation. You build what I call outcome distance. Outcome distance is the number of steps between your actions and the final result that are not under your control. The more steps, the more you should shift your focus from outcome to indicators. If you are dating, the outcome is a relationship. Outcome distance is huge because it depends on another nervous system. Your indicators are: did you show up honest? Did you ask better questions? Did you choose well? Did you communicate boundaries? Did you take the risk to be seen? That is what you can instrument. If you are building a business, the outcome is revenue or adoption. Outcome distance is huge. Your indicators are number of quality conversations, conversion rate at each step, retention, speed of iteration, the rate at which you learn what customers actually do rather than what they say. Detachment is not passivity, it is measurement at the right level. Now stay with me, because this next part recontextualizes everything. The deepest reason you cling to outcomes is not desire, it is bargaining. Your mind believes quietly that if it cares hard enough, reality will cooperate. This is a childhood strategy that survived into adulthood. When you were young, caring harder sometimes did change outcomes. Crying, pleading, performing, being good, being impressive. Attachment worked because you were negotiating with humans. But adult reality is full of non-negotiable systems: biology, markets, timing, other people, luck, randomness. Caring harder does not create leverage. It just creates suffering. So detachment is the moment you stop bargaining with reality and start collaborating with it. And collaboration requires a very specific internal move. You replace "I must get this" with "I must run the experiment well." Not because you are lowering standards, but because you are upgrading your relationship to uncertainty. Here is a midpoint reality check. If you only remember one sentence, make it this: ambition is your direction. Attachment is your leash. You can keep direction and cut the leash. Now we get to the part that actually makes detachment stable, not something you do for a week and then relapse. Most people try to detach by shutting off emotion. That backfires because emotion is information. You need a different strategy. You need a second scorecard. Right now you have one scorecard, and it is external. Did I win? Did I lose? Did I get the thing? Did they approve? Did it work? Detachment requires an internal scorecard that is at least as real to you as the external one. Otherwise, you will always crawl back to outcomes for validation. Your internal scorecard is not "did I try my best?" That is vague and childish. It has to be specific, measurable, and linked to principles you respect. I will give you a framework. It is called the 3 outputs. Output 1 is execution quality. Did you do the reps with precision? Not effort. Precision. Did you write the email you would respect reading? Did you have the hard conversation without hiding? Did you train with form? Execution quality is under your control. Output 2 is learning velocity. Did you get smarter this week in a way that changes next week? And a learning velocity is not consuming information. It is updating behavior. It is the speed at which feedback becomes adaptation. Output 3 is emotional recovery time. How long did it take you to return to functional calm after uncertainty hit? Not to feel nothing, to recover. Recovery time is a skill. It is trainable, and it predicts long-term success more than raw intensity, because intensity without recovery creates burnout. Now watch what happens when you live by this internal scorecard. You can lose externally and still win internally. That is not cope. That is how you stay in the game long enough for probability to bend in your favor, because outcomes often lag behind the skill that produces them. If you make outcomes your only scorecard, you quit during the lag. And there is one more layer, and it is uncomfortable, but it will free you if you let it land. A lot of your attachment is social. Even if your goal looks personal, the nervous system is tracking status. Evolution trained you to care about rank because rank predicted resources and safety. So an outcome is not just a result. It is a perceived status shift, up or down. This is why you can feel devastated by something that objectively does not matter that much. A post that flops. A promotion you do not get. Someone you wanted not choosing you. It hits like exile, Detachment requires you to see this status calculus in real time. When you feel the spike, ask, is this about the goal, or is this about what I think people will infer about me? Then do something that feels almost too simple. Name the audience in your head. Is it your parents, your ex, your co-workers, and some imaginary jury of hyper-competent strangers? When you name the audience, you turn a fog into an object, and objects can be handled. Fog just suffocates you. Now let us synthesize this into something you can actually run, because insight without a protocol turns into content you enjoyed and then forgot. Here is the mental model, the archer. An attached person aims and then clutches the arrow in midair, trying to steer it with their mind. That is what rumination is. That is what refreshing metrics is. That is what checking for signs is. You are trying to control what can only be influenced before release. A detached, ambitious person does three things. First, they choose a target that matters, but they do not use it as a verdict. It is a coordinate, not a courtroom. Second, they obsess over the release, the stance, the breath, the draw, the alignment. That is execution quality and learning velocity. That is what they own. Third, once the arrow leaves, they do not chase it emotionally. They watch it clinically. Where did it land? What did the wind do? What do I adjust? That is feedback mode. That is outcome distance and instrumentation. And here is the secret that people miss. Letting go is not a mood. It is a sequencing rule. Aim, commit, release, update, repeat. If you violate the sequence, you suffer. If you respect the sequence, you become dangerous in the best way. Calm, consistent, hard to derail. So if you want a simple practice starting today, try this. Before you begin a high-stakes task, write one sentence. The outcome is information, not identity. Then write 3 bullets, the 3 outputs you are aiming to win today, 1 execution standard, 1 learning question, 1 recovery behavior. After the task, do a 90-second debrief, not a journal confession, a debrief. What was the signal? What will I change? How fast will I recover? Do this for 2 weeks and you will notice something eerie. Your ambition does not decrease. It concentrates. It stops leaking into fantasies and panic and starts showing up as clean action. And that is the whole point. Detachment is not withdrawal. It is precision. If you have ever felt like caring less would make you lazy, now you know why that fear exists. You are equating attachment with fuel. But attachment is not fuel. Attachment is friction. So here is my question to leave you with. What would you attempt if outcomes stopped being a verdict on your worth and became nothing more than data from the world? If this changed how you see your goals, tell me in the comments what outcome you have been using as identity evidence. And the next time you feel yourself gripping the result, remember the archer. Your job is the release, not the flight.